That wave of pure satisfaction, the one that washes over you when everything finally falls into place? That's exactly what I felt standing in my newly purchased condominium. The sleek, modern space around me represented 6 years of relentless determination and careful planning. Finally, I could say I owned my own home. And not just any home, but a beautifully designed urban sanctuary that reflected both my professional aesthetic and personal journey. My name is Evelyn, I'm 29, and this is my story. I can still perfectly recall that pivotal moment 2 years ago when my career trajectory changed. The UX design team lead called me into her glass-walled office, and my heart was racing, convinced I had somehow messed up our latest projects. Instead, she slid a contract across her minimalist desk, complete with a significant salary bump that would change everything. From that day forward, I lived like I was still a struggling design student. No fancy coffee runs, no impromptu shopping sprees, absolutely nothing excessive. Every dollar went straight into my savings account, each deposit bringing me closer to my dream. But I'll be honest, it wasn't just my savings that made this possible. Last year, my grandmother Eleanor passed away. She was my mother's mother, and the only person who truly saw me during those difficult years after Mom died. She left me $150,000 in her will. That inheritance, combined with my carefully accumulated savings, meant I could finally stop pinning dream homes on Pinterest and start actually viewing properties. When I found this two-bedroom condominium with its floor-to-ceiling windows and open-concept layout, I knew it was meant to be mine. Not too sprawling, not too confined, just perfect for a young professional who needed both a home office and room to breathe. The best part? No mortgage weighing me down. The real estate agent's eyes widened when I mentioned I wanted to pay in full, her professional composure slipping for just a moment as I signed those life-changing papers. I couldn't help myself. My designer's eye took over. I spent hours capturing the perfect angles of my new space, carefully editing each photo to highlight the natural light streaming through those gorgeous windows. When I finally posted them on Instagram, my feed exploded with likes and comments. Congratulations, Evelyn. Living the dream. When's the housewarming? That view is incredible. The warmth of genuine celebration from my friends felt amazing. Then my phone buzzed with an incoming call, and my stomach instantly knotted. The name on the screen, Howard, Dad. Evelyn. His voice came through, dry as autumn leaves. I need you to come over for lunch next Saturday. Flashback. That single call brought back everything I'd been trying to process through years of therapy. Mom died when I was 9. Cancer moved swiftly and mercilessly, leaving our family in pieces. But Dad, he didn't stay in those pieces long. Within a year, he married Patricia, a marketing manager from his company. And shortly after, they had my half-sister. Patricia never warmed to me, even before Madeline was born. But after, that's when our house transformed into a carefully curated showcase of their perfect family, with me as the inconvenient prop. Suddenly, there were new rules, meticulously enforced, but mysteriously applying only to me. Evelyn, your music is disrupting Madeline's study time. Evelyn, we can't have your art supplies cluttering the dining room. Evelyn, your friends make too much noise. Meanwhile, Madeline existed in a bubble of constant privilege. Designer clothes, always the latest collections, cutting-edge gadgets, pre-ordered before release, family vacations, planned around her preferences. I became a shadow in my own home, watching from the periphery as Dad and Patricia crafted their picture-perfect family life, one Instagram post at a time. Thank God for Grandma Eleanor. Those years would have been unbearable without her modern little house, just a 15-minute bike ride away. Her door was always open, her home a sanctuary where I could spread out my sketchbooks and just be myself. My cousins, Lucas, Emma, and young Tommy, were often there too. My Aunt Sarah's kids who treated me like actual family, not an inconvenient reminder of their father's past. We'd spend hours playing board games, watching movies, or just hanging out in Grandma's artfully designed garden, where she taught me about color theory through her flower arrangements. Meanwhile, life at my father's house grew increasingly tense. Madeline had evolved into a master of subtle torment. She'd accidentally spill water on my sketchbooks, delete my digital artwork files while borrowing my laptop, and spread whispers through our high school about my weird obsession with art. Yet somehow, I was always cast as the villain in Patricia's carefully scripted family drama. "Evelyn, why are you making your sister uncomfortable?" Patricia would demand, her voice dripping with rehearsed concern. "Evelyn, stop antagonizing Madeline," Dad would echo, never pausing to question the narrative. College years. The day my college acceptance letter arrived, complete with a substantial scholarship for the design program, was a turning point. Not just because of the opportunity, though getting that scholarship was incredible, but because it meant freedom. The college was 3 states away, and Grandma Eleanor helped cover what the scholarship didn't. She understood that this wasn't just about education. It was about escape. College felt like stepping into a world designed just for me. The creative energy, the collaborative projects, the constant push to innovate, I thrived in it all. I threw myself into my UX design studies, had weekly video calls with Grandma, and tried to minimize thoughts about my father's carefully curated family life. He rarely called anyway, too busy managing Madeline's social media presence and Patricia's endless home renovation projects. When he did reach out, our conversations were as superficial as an unfinished wireframe. After graduation, I had to return to my home state. Thomson Digital had offered me a position in their UX team, and it was the kind of opportunity that could launch a career. I assumed I'd temporarily stay with Dad and Patricia until I found my own place, a naive thought, as I quickly learned. "Oh, we converted your room into Madeline's private study space," Patricia announced with practiced sympathy during our phone call. "She needs a proper environment for her social media content creation. You understand, don't you?" Dad remained silent in the background as usual. Thank heaven for Grandma Eleanor. She welcomed me home with open arms and a freshly designed guest room. I stayed with her while starting my new job, and within a few months, I had enough saved for a modest rental apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine, my first real space to design as I pleased. Then a year ago, Grandma passed away suddenly, a stroke in her sleep. She left her house to my cousins, which made perfect sense since they lived closer and had always helped maintain it. To me, she left $150,000, her life's savings. In her will, she wrote, "For my granddaughter who sees the world through her mother's artistic eyes." This past year has been eerily quiet. Dad's Instagram perfect family hasn't bothered much with me. They didn't even send a Christmas invitation, though their social media was flooded with pictures of their intimate family celebration. I spent it with Aunt Sarah and my cousins instead, and honestly, it was the most authentic holiday I'd experienced in years. The confrontation. That Saturday, I drove to my father's house, my stomach clenching tighter with each turn into their upscale neighborhood. I checked my designer watch, a self-gifted celebration of my last promotion. 11:57. Early, but I'd rather be early than give Patricia another reason to post passive-aggressive comments about my lack of consideration. I pressed the doorbell, counting the seconds until it swung open. Dad appeared, his face as blank as an unused canvas. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. No hello, no questions about my new place. Just come in. They were arranged in the living room like a staged photo shoot. Patricia perched in her premium leather armchair like she was posing for a lifestyle magazine. and Madeline sprawled across the Italian designer sofa, scrolling through her phone with practiced indifference. Patricia acknowledged me with a curt nod that wouldn't disrupt her perfect makeup. Madeline didn't even glance up from her screen. "Sit down, Evelyn." Dad gestured to a lonely accent chair positioned across from them. The setup felt like a design critique gone wrong. Me facing a panel of harsh judges. The silence stretched between us like a poorly planned white space. Dad cleared his throat twice before speaking. "Madeline has graduated high school," he announced, as if I hadn't seen the professional photography session plastered all over their social media. "She's enrolled in the local college." I nodded, mentally calculating where this was heading. Was this about a graduation gift? I hadn't been invited to the ceremony, but their Instagram stories had documented every moment. "That's nice," I offered carefully, when it became clear they were waiting for a response. "She needs appropriate accommodation," Dad continued, his eyes fixed somewhere above my head like an uncomfortable client, avoiding direct feedback. "Somewhere close to campus." Another pause. Patricia was nodding along like she was following a social media choreography. And well, Dad shifted in his imported leather seat. "Your condominium would be perfect. The location is ideal for her class schedule." "I'm not looking for a roommate," I said slowly, my designer's instinct for problem solving trying to make sense of this bizarre request. Dad shook his head, finally meeting my eyes. "You misunderstand, Evelyn. We're not asking you to let Madeline live with you. We're asking you to give her your condominium." The confrontation continues. I actually laughed, a sharp, startled sound that died as quickly as a failed design pitch. The looks on their faces froze my laughter instantly. They weren't joking. This wasn't some elaborate prank for Madeline's social media. "Give her my condominium?" The words felt surreal leaving my mouth. As in, give up my home? The one I just bought. The one I spent 6 years saving for while working my way up from junior designer. "Yes," Dad said firmly, using the same tone he'd used to explain why my artwork couldn't hang in the living room. "Madeline needs it more than you do." I sat there, staring at them, feeling like I was trapped in a poorly designed user interface with no exit button. My condominium, the one I'd saved every commission for, the one I'd bought with my inheritance from Grandma Eleanor. They wanted me to just hand it over. To Madeline, who was still methodically ignoring my presence, probably crafting her next Instagram story. "She deserves it more than you do," Patricia interjected, her voice dripping with the same condescension she'd used since I was 9. "After all, what have you done to deserve such a nice place? Living all alone in a 2-bedroom condominium, while my precious Madeline has to consider student housing like some common freshman." I stood up so quickly my chair scraped against their imported hardwood floors. "Have you completely lost touch with reality?" My voice came out stronger than expected, like a final presentation I knew I'd nailed. "I'm not giving up my condominium. Not now, not ever. I bought that place with my own money." Dad's face darkened like a storm cloud. "Your own money? Your grandmother gave you $150,000. That's hardly your own money." Something snapped inside me, like when a design finally breaks after too many revisions. Years of staying quiet, of accepting their curated version of reality, of trying to be professional about their treatment, it all shattered in an instant. "My grandmother," I laughed, but it sounded more like broken code. "You mean my mother's mother? The only person who supported my career choice when you were too busy financing Madeline's influencer dreams? That grandmother? The one who has absolutely no connection to Madeline whatsoever." The emotional peak. Right on cue, Madeline finally looked up from her phone, her face morphing into that perfectly practiced expression of distress she used in her vulnerable moment social media posts. "You're such a horrible sister," she wailed, already positioning her face for optimal lighting. You've always been jealous of my following. You've never supported my content. Evelyn, Dad's voice hardened, like he was reprimanding a difficult client. I'm very disappointed in you. This is not how we raised you. You didn't raise me at all. The words exploded out of me like a failed project finally being scrapped. You checked out the moment Mom died, and Patricia moved in with her marketing strategies and perfect family image. Don't you dare talk about how you raised me. I grabbed my designer bag, a symbol of my first major project bonus, and headed for the door. My whole body was shaking with the kind of adrenaline that usually only came before big presentations. Behind me, I could hear Madeline's rehearsed sobs, Patricia's soothing murmurs about getting better angles on this moment, and Dad calling my name. But I didn't stop. I couldn't get out of that staged reality fast enough. The next day, I thought that would be the end of it. I really did. But the next morning, my phone lit up with Dad's call during my morning design review. Evelyn, listen to me, he started before I could even say hello. You're the older sister. You need to help Madeline build her brand. This is what family does. I almost laughed. Family? Now he wants to talk about family. Where was this family spirit when Patricia converted my bedroom into Madeline's content creation studio? When Madeline was sabotaging my portfolio? When they excluded me from their carefully filtered Christmas photos? That's different, he insisted. You're being unreasonable. Madeline needs. You're completely disconnected from reality. I cut him off. Actually delusional if you think I'm going to give my home to someone who spent her entire life trying to erase me from the family narrative. Don't call me again about this. Messages. I hung up, but within minutes, my phone started buzzing with Patricia's perfectly crafted messages. You've always been envious of Madeline's social media success. You're just like your mother, unable to understand modern marketing. After everything we've done for your personal brand. I stared at the messages on my UX-optimized screen, feeling a strange sense of professional detachment wash over me. Dad kept calling throughout the day, but I stopped answering. What was the point? The conversation would just loop endlessly. Him demanding I give up my home, me refusing, him guilt-tripping me about family obligations, and Madeline's influencer career needs. The housewarming. A week after the confrontation, I decided to proceed with my housewarming party. My condominium was filled with people who actually mattered, my UX team colleagues, design school friends, and my cousins. The sound of genuine laughter and unfiltered conversation felt like a cleansing reset, washing away the artificiality of the previous weekend. Evelyn, Emma called from the kitchen. We're running low on ice. I was heading to my meticulously organized freezer when Lucas grabbed my arm. His expression was serious, unusual for my typically lighthearted cousin who always appreciated good UX jokes. Hey, I need to show you something, he said quietly, guiding me toward my home office space. You might want to sit down for this. I perched on my ergonomic ottoman as Lucas pulled out his phone. He hesitated for a moment, then handed it to me. I was at Lorenzo's last night with some developer friends, he explained. Look who I caught in the back booth. The first photo made my mind buffer like a frozen screen. There was Patricia, my stepmother, in a dimly lit restaurant booth. But she wasn't alone. A man I'd never seen before had his arm around her, and they were kissing. Not a staged social media kiss, but the kind of intimate moment that would never make it to Instagram. More photos followed, Patricia laughing, her hand on the man's chest, the man feeding her a bite of dessert, their fingers intertwined on the table. They looked comfortable together, intimate, like a long-running A/B test that had proven successful thousands of times. The investigation. Lucas hesitated. I know I shouldn't have taken pictures, but send them to me, I interrupted, my voice barely a whisper. Please. After the party ended and my last guest left, I sat in my dark living room, the blue light of my laptop screen illuminating the space as I stared at the photos Lucas had sent. Who was this man? I needed to know. It didn't take long to find him. Patricia wasn't exactly careful with her digital footprint. He was right there in her professional network. Nathan Mitchell. His profile revealed he'd been at Riverside Marketing for 20 years. The same company where Patricia worked. The same company she'd been at since before she married my father. I scrolled through his digital history, going back years. Company picnics, office parties, holiday celebrations, and in so many of them, there she was. Sometimes lurking in the background, sometimes partially cropped, but unmistakably Patricia. 20 years of photos showing a relationship that went far beyond professional networking. One photo from 15 years ago caught my UX-trained eye. A woman in a red designer dress, her face strategically turned away from the camera, sitting on a park bench with Nathan. The caption read, "Perfect Sunday afternoon." The woman's signature hair, her characteristic posture, that luxury brand dress she still kept in her carefully curated closet. It was Patricia, 3 years into her marriage to my father. I opened another tab and searched for more recent photos of Nathan Mitchell. As his face filled my screen, something hit me like a failed usability test. Those eyes, that nose, the way his mouth curved up slightly at the corners, even when he wasn't really smiling. I pulled up a recent photo of Madeline from her influencer feed and held it next to the screen. The resemblance wasn't just similar, it was a perfect pattern match. How had I never noticed before? Madeline looked nothing like my father. She never had. But she was practically a carbon copy of Nathan Mitchell. The truth. The truth burned in my digital files like corrupted data. For 2 days, I walked around in a daze, carrying the weight of what I'd discovered. Every time I looked at the photos, my professional composure threatened to crack. 20 years of deception, and my father completely blind to the carefully constructed illusion. When his number flashed on my phone screen again, I almost didn't answer. But something, maybe the designer's instinct for resolution, made me pick up. Evelyn. His voice was stern, authoritative. The voice he used when he thought he was being a father. We need to have a serious conversation. Come to the house. Now. I considered revealing everything right then, exposing the truth about his wife's 2-decade affair, about Madeline's real father. But my UX training told me some revelations needed the right interface. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said instead. They were waiting in the living room, just Dad and Patricia this time. Sit down, Evelyn, Dad commanded, and I complied, playing the role of dutiful daughter one last time. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. Your behavior has been unacceptable, he began, pacing in front of their designer fireplace. This selfishness, this refusal to help your sister, it stops now. I watched Patricia nodding along, and my stomach turned. The audacity of this woman, demanding I give up my condominium to her secret lover's daughter. I've made a decision, Dad continued, his voice hard. Either you sign over your condominium to Madeline, or I'm writing you out of my will completely. No inheritance, no family money, nothing. Patricia's face lit up with the same satisfaction she showed after a successful marketing campaign. They really thought they had me cornered. I kept my expression neutral, like presenting a difficult design concept to a challenging client. I need to think about this, I whispered, watching Patricia's smile grow wider. Good girl, Dad said, his voice softening slightly. It takes time to understand what really matters. The evidence. Could I use the bathroom first? I asked, making my voice small and uncertain. Dad waved his hand dismissively. and I hurried upstairs. But instead of going to the bathroom, I slipped into Madeline's room, my old room, now transformed into a content creator's dream setup with ring lights and backdrop screens. Her designer hairbrush sat on the vanity, full of long, dark strands that matched Nathan Mitchell's exactly. My hands trembling slightly, I pulled a small evidence bag from my purse and carefully collected several strands. Next, I moved to Dad's bedroom. His comb was right where it always was, on his dresser next to his wedding photo with Patricia. The irony wasn't lost on me as I collected his hair into a second bag. That night, I researched DNA testing facilities, the kind that did paternity tests, the kind that would hold up in court if needed. It wasn't cheap, nearly $2,000 for rush processing, but it was worth every penny from my design bonus. The results. The DNA test results arrived in a plain white envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it, though I already knew what it would say. The clinical language was unmistakable. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of the tested child. The probability of paternity is 0%. That evening, right on cue, my phone rang. Patricia's name flashed on the screen. "We're tired of waiting," she snapped, not bothering with a hello. "Your father and I need your decision about the condominium within the next few days. Otherwise, you can kiss your inheritance goodbye." I kept my voice steady, like presenting a winning design solution. "Actually, I've been thinking about everything. I'll come over for dinner this Saturday. We can discuss it then." The final confrontation. Saturday evening, I drove to their house again, the DNA test results tucked safely in my designer portfolio. This time, the knot in my stomach wasn't from anxiety. It was anticipation for the final presentation of truth. They were all waiting in the living room, arranged like a perfectly staged photo shoot. Patricia was practically glowing with premature victory. Madeline sprawled on the sofa, examining her carefully manicured nails with a smirk. Dad stood by the fireplace, trying to look stern, but barely containing his satisfaction. Finally, Madeline drawled, "Took you long enough to make the right decision." Dad stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. "I'm glad you've come to understand what family means, Evelyn. This is what being there for each other is all about." I shrugged off his hand. "I haven't changed my mind. I'm not giving up my condominium. Not now. Not ever." "You ungrateful brat." Dad's face turned red. "That's it. You're out of the will. Everything goes to Madeline, my real daughter. The one who actually understands family loyalty." I couldn't help it. I laughed. The sound echoed through their perfectly curated living room, making them all stare at me like I disrupted their carefully planned content. "Your real daughter?" I reached into my portfolio. "That's interesting, Dad, because I have something you need to see." I pulled out the envelope and held it out to him. He snatched it, glaring at me as he yanked the papers out. "Read it," I said softly. "Read it out loud." He began reading, his voice confident at first. "DNA relationship testing report." Then his face started to change. The color drained from his cheeks as he reached the crucial line. The paper shook in his hands like a glitching screen. The truth revealed. Patricia made a sound like a crashed system. This is fabricated," she screamed, her perfect composure finally breaking. "She's manipulated the data. She's trying to turn you against me. Against us." "I have more evidence," I said quietly, pulling out my phone. While Patricia continued to scream about data manipulation, my fingers moved swiftly through my gallery to find the photos Lucas had taken. "Look." The room fell silent as I held up the screen. There was Patricia, locked in an intimate embrace with Nathan Mitchell. The timestamp showed it was from just last week. Patricia collapsed onto their premium sofa, her carefully maintained facade finally glitching. David, please. I can explain. Explain? He roared, making us all flinch like a sudden pop-up error. Explain what? How long? 20 years. He's my colleague at Riverside Marketing, she whispered, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. Madeline, she's. Nathan is her father. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched my father's carefully constructed world collapse in real time. 20 years of meticulously curated lies crashing down around him. Without another word, I picked up my portfolio and walked out, leaving them to their system crash. The aftermath. The next week passed in a blur of wireframes and design meetings. I went to work, came home, tried to process everything that had happened. Through the office grapevine, I heard that Patricia and Madeline had moved out, that Dad had hired the city's top divorce lawyer, that their social media perfect family saga had imploded across their carefully maintained networks. When Dad's number appeared on my phone a week later, I almost didn't answer. But something in me, maybe the part that still believed in user reconciliation, made me pick up. Can we meet? His voice sounded rough, like unoptimized code. Coffee at Carson's Cafe? The reconciliation. I found him at a corner table, staring into a cold cup of coffee. He looked like a website that had lost all its styling, disheveled, shoulders slumped, wedding ring conspicuously absent. I filed for divorce, he said without preamble. Patricia, Anne, and Madeline are gone. I told them to leave my house. I've stopped Madeline's college payments, too. Why should I fund another man's child's content creation dreams? I sat silently, stirring my artisanal latte, waiting like a designer anticipating user feedback. Evelyn, his voice cracked. I've been a terrible father to you. Yes, I agreed calmly. You have. All these years. I favored Madeline over you. I let Patricia push you to the margins of our family story. I didn't protect you, didn't support your dreams. I failed you in every possible way. You did, I said. And you never would have realized it if you hadn't discovered Madeline's true parentage. If she had been your biological daughter, you would have kept treating me like a deprecated feature. You would have taken my condominium from me and given it to her without a second thought. He flinched at my words, but didn't try to deny them. Please, he whispered, reaching across the table. I pulled my hands back before he could touch them. Please, give me a chance to make it right. Let me try to be the father you deserved all along. Epilogue. That was 3 months ago. We meet occasionally now. Coffee, lunch, careful conversations about safe topics. He tries to make up for lost time, sharing stories about Mom that he'd never mentioned before, asking about my UX projects, my design philosophy, my life. But complete forgiveness? I'm not there yet. Maybe I never will be. 20 years of being treated like an unwanted beta version left scars that won't heal overnight, if they ever heal at all. As for Patricia and Madeline, I hear snippets through the social media grapevine. They moved in with Nathan Mitchell, I think. Started living the life they'd been secretly designing all along. But honestly, I don't really care. They're part of a deprecated codebase in my life that's been permanently archived.